Welcome everyone to So What Were You Wearing? And we have a very special guest today. Her name is Dr. Anita Rowe. And how I met Anita is a special story all in itself. I was attending an Emotional Intelligence and Diversity Institute in Lake Arrowhead, and a dear colleague friend of mine, Jorge Travask, introduced me to Anita. And that is how we first met over 10 years ago. So you're going to be delighted to learn more about Anita and what she was wearing when she met her beloved. So Anita, welcome to the show. It's great to
Thank you,
have you
Heidi.
here.
It's great to be here. Great to talk with you.
Oh, likewise,
Yeah.
likewise. And so, we've talked a little bit about this, and as our viewers know, I don't know the story ahead of time. And I choose not to know it because I want to be surprised, just like our viewers are. So that's, I'm letting them know, as well as you and I already know, that that is where we are starting our journey here. And it's a very exciting topic to me. And that's part of the reason that I do this, is to find out just exactly how the synchronicities happened and that you met your husband to be.
Well,
So
and I love the question because I ask it of people all the time. When I'm around a couple that I don't know well, I often, sooner or later, will ask, how did you meet? Because I always want to know what brought them together. How did they connect? How did that
yeah,
happen?
it's interesting that you like that question too.
Mhm.
And when you do that, do you find out juicy
Oh, way
information?
more things about them, and there's more depth to them. And
Mhm.
I understand them better. I know them better. I don't know. It helps me to get to know them.
Does, because it's a real core piece. So that's
Mhm.
where we're going today for sure.
Right.
And now I'm going to ask you the question. And so to find out, what was going on in your life, because I know you've had a very beautiful and contoured life over the years. And so with many steps and many careers, that sort of thing. And so where were you on your path when you first met?
Mhm. Well, I'm laughing when you say you're going to be surprised by the story because the story surprised me too. I was never expecting this to happen. And I think often the things that happen to us in life that are the most powerful are things that are unexpected, unplanned, and somehow serendipitous. So I was a school teacher in Los Angeles Unified School District at the time, and I had been picked to work on a federally funded staff development project around mandatory integration. And in fact, that's where I met my business partner, Lee, who you know.
Yeah.
And so I was the director of this project, and I was sent to go to a meeting of all the heads of these kinds of projects throughout the state of California. It was a conference for us in San Diego.
Right.
And I was at this point in my life
And
personally. Mhm.
mhm. And let me
Right.
just let's just highlight a little bit here of the mandatory integration
Oh,
that was
okay.
going on. And
Sure.
just if you can tell us a little bit about that so that we have a context of
Sure.
the type of work you were doing at the time.
Yeah, this was the late 70s, and Los Angeles Unified was court mandated to integrate the district. So this was what was known in the newspapers as forced busing or
Mhm.
busing, the integration of the school district. LA Unified is 50 miles by 50 miles. It is huge, over
Mm.
600 elementary schools, 60 high schools. It's a mammoth, the second largest in the country.
Oh my God.
And it was de facto segregated by where people lived.
Mhm.
So the court said you have to mix the kids and get them moving and get kids in integrated schools when they're not. And I happened to be teaching in the West Valley, which was fairly white, somewhat Hispanic, but mostly white. And that was a highly impacted area for this change of
Mm.
student body. And there
Mhm.
was an uproar, a fear. People were scared. They didn't know what to do. Teachers were asking a lot of questions. They were fearful. How I teach these kids, these new kind of kids? They're different. Everything's going to be different. Schools were having a hard time figuring out how to deal with it. And in the midst of this, a forward-thinking woman in the school district, who turned out to be my boss on this project, had written a grant that got funded for 1/10 of the school district, which was the West Valley, to help the school, a project to train us to go in and help schools deal with this huge change and upheaval.
Wow.
How to learn how to work with new kids, how to help the kids get to know each other and work together, and really integrate, not just be demographically integrated, but actually be together
That's
in the
huge.
school.
That's a huge initiative to
Yeah,
step
it was
into.
huge. It was huge. And
Yeah.
it was a spectacular project. It was a wonderful methodology of how to go in and train the staff and get a team together at each school site. And actually it was the foundation for my work now, because at the end of that project, we left the school district and started our own consulting business, which I've done for over 40 years,
Wow.
and wrote a number of books on diversity and all that. But it really had its roots in this
Yeah.
project. So that was the context of my professional life then. And in my personal life, I had been married early and was divorced. So I was, I think I was divorced for about 4 or 5 years, I think, at the time. And I would have loved to have met somebody, or to find somebody to spend my life with, but never seemed to be able to meet the right person. I was not good at dating. I hated it, actually. And it was not my favorite thing. And
Totally get it.
it
Yeah.
just, I was like, oh, well, if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I got my, I had bought a condo. I felt like, okay, I have my place in the world. I don't have to have a husband to have a house. And,
Right.
I was feeling okay, but there was a hole. I mean, in terms of having a partner, a beloved,
Sure.
I feel
Absolutely.
totally loved by my family, my friends, and all that. But to have a person who you're the most important person to in the world.
Right. That you can come home and share what you're doing at your
Yeah.
work and everything else that's going on. Yeah.
So sure, I think I was definitely open to the idea, but I sure didn't know how to make it happen.
Right.
So in the midst of that, my boss said, you have to go to this conference, and I wanted my team to go too. And he said, no, we can only afford to send one. You have to go by yourself. And I said, okay. And so I got I live in Los Angeles. San Diego's close, but I thought, oh, hell, I'm going to fly. The rest of the people are flying too. So
Absolutely.
I got a ticket. And as it happens, the day I was in that era, PSA was the airline. It was like Southwest that flew local flights.
Right.
And the day I flew on a Tuesday, on Monday, the day before the flight, the same flight I was going to take the next day crashed. It was a horrible tragedy, and everyone died.
Oh my goodness.
The plane went down somewhere between LA and San Diego, and everyone died on the plane.
Now this is when that was that
the day before I was supposed to fly.
Oh my goodness.
So I remember everybody was just thunderstruck and horrified. And I don't know if it was malfunction, mechanical. I can't remember what the reason was, but I thought, oh my God, this is horrible. I thought, well, I'll just cancel and drive.
Right.
Because it's a 2.5-hour drive.
Right.
And I said, no, you're not going to do that. You've never been afraid to fly in your life. You're not going to start being afraid now. And if the odds were ever in your favor, it's now.
Right.
Not going to happen 2 days in a row.
Right.
And so I went ahead, and I got on the plane. There were hardly any people on the plane, as you can well imagine.
I think, Anita,
on the plane, there were like 15 people.
Okay.
And one of those people was Daryl.
No way.
And so I sat. They have 2 sections on the plane where you sit facing the seats are reversed. So there's 2 rows where the seats face each other.
Sure. In
this setup on the plane. And I sat there because I'm tall and I have long legs, and it's more comfortable. And he sat there because, as I found out later, I saw that he walked on crutches. He had an automobile accident that left him partially paralyzed when he was in his early 20s. And so he used forearm crutches to walk. And this was easy for him to sit and slide the crutches under the seat and all that. So he sat in this same section. So even though there were very few people on the plane, we sat across from one another on this
Amazing.
flight. And I think I was nervous. And
Mhm.
so usually I'm pretty not real outgoing with strangers. And
Not too chatty. Let's.
no. And I started the conversation and said something probably inane, like, gee, do you think there's so few people on a plane because of yesterday? Brilliant person that I am.
Sure.
And we just started to talk. And the flight is very short. It's only 20 minutes.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so in the Corbin, of course, there's time before it takes off and all of that. So
Yeah.
whatever, we had maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes max
Right.
to talk. In the course of the conversation, what do you do? Why are you going to San Diego? Blah, blah. I found out a little bit about him. He was an architect. He was the chief architect of this company that was building a huge subdivision in the San Diego area called Terrasana. And
Mhm.
he was going down, he went down, he said, I go every week to inspect, the project and talk to the city uh, housing people and all of that.
Yeah.
And he said, actually, he said, I have a standing reservation on the flight yesterday that crashed. And he said, I don't know why. He said, late Sunday night, I called my secretary and said, change my flight to Tuesday. He said, I don't know why. I just did it. And he said, everybody who had was calling my office all day yesterday. He said, thinking that I was on the flight that went down, because that was the normal flight he took every single week. So it was like bizarre, right?
Anita, yes. And to think if you had gone with your fear on the other side of this,
If I
yes.
had driven, I wouldn't have
If
met
you
him.
had
If he had
driven,
taken the flight, he wouldn't be here.
right.
So yeah,
Hmm.
it was very strange.
Did you both kind of just stare at each other and go, hmm,
Well, I
you
just
know?
said that was a good decision.
So, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
how far into the conversation did he share that piece
I
of
don't
it?
remember. I don't
Yeah.
remember, but yeah, it wasn't not long, because it was pretty, that was pretty easy to talk about in terms of not very,
Sure.
but it was interesting because knowing, if anybody that knows me knows that I was raised in a very traditional home. I'm Serbian by background. And so my upbringing was very much protected.
Okay.
And I wasn't, I mean, I was free to
What
study
was,
and go to school and do
yeah,
all those
what
things,
did,
but socially, I was not somebody who, I didn't date a lot. I never went
Mhm.
out with anybody that 18 people couldn't recommend the person and tell me who they were and what, that I know all their background. And I never went out with anybody that I met in a bar or just ran into, or that never happened in my life. So in the
Right.
course of the flight, he said,
Anita.
what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm going to this conference. And he said, where are you staying? And I told him, and he said, oh, he said, I'm gonna, and he said, he asked me to go to lunch the next
Oh,
day. He said,
how
he asked me out to lunch, and I said, yeah. And I mean, even I was shocked myself, because I was just a stranger. I don't know
right.
him from a hole in the ground. And I said,
Right.
yes. And he said, I have a car, I'm renting a car. He said, I can drop you off at your hotel. And I said, no, it's okay. I said, the people are flying in from a different airport from the district. And I said, I'm going to meet up with them. So I'll just see you tomorrow at lunch. So that's where we left it. But we had a really nice conversation. I don't remember what we talked about, but what I asked myself later, what was it
Yeah.
about him, and why did you trust him to go out
Right.
with him? And what drew you?
Right.
There was something so kind in his face. He had such a warmth and
Mm.
such I can't even, kind sounds like a dopey word.
Oh,
There was such a warmth and a kindness in him. And he just exuded like just goodness,
oh,
in a really
yeah.
weird way. And I liked that. I guess I
Yeah.
felt safe. I felt, fine with him.
Mhm.
And so we got off the plane and we were walking to the baggage area. And I saw at a distance, I saw the people that I was supposed to meet from the school district. And I thought, they look so boring. And I said, you know what? I changed my mind. I said, yeah, you can drop me off at the hotel.
Go, Anita.
So
Right on.
yeah, I
You
got my
really did
suitcase,
that
and
in that
he
moment.
later said, "Sure, you felt safe with me because you knew you could outrun me." Um, but so we went. He dropped me. He took me to the hotel. We went in
Anita,
and we had a
that's
drink and
true.
we talked.
Oh
And
my,
he just seemed like such a nice person, just a good
wow.
person.
Wow.
And
That's really something.
yeah. So the
It's like
next
a,
day he took me to lunch.
yeah.
And he said, "Oh," he said, "I hope you don't mind, but I'm training a new." He said, "I'm leaving this company because I'm going to start my own kind of my own land development business." He said, "And I'm leaving the company." He said, "So I'm training a new guy to take my spot, the new who's going to be the head of chief architect." And he said he's going to be there, so he's going to have to come to lunch. Is that okay? I said, "Yeah." I mean, I wanted to say I don't know you either, so why would it be bad to have somebody else I don't know?
Right.
Yeah. So we went, and I don't remember what we talked about,
That
but
is so funny.
the impression stayed in terms of him. I still felt like he was such a neat guy. So he asked
Mhm.
me to go to dinner the following night, and I did, and we had a lovely evening.
My goodness.
And so, he said, tomorrow night, I was going home Friday. He was
Yeah.
going home in the morning. I was going home at the end of the day. I had meetings all day. And he said, they're having a big going up, not big, but a going away party for me in Santa Monica.
Mhm.
Um, when I get to Friday night, I'd really like you to come. And I said, "Oh, thank you, but I don't think that's good." I said, "You're ending a whole piece of your life that I'm not a part of. I don't know any of the people that you work with. They want to say goodbye to you. I'll just be a fifth wheel. And I don't. And I really had a feeling not to go. And he just
Right.
kept hounding me and hounding, and not, kept saying, "Oh." And so finally, against my better judgment, I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So he said, "I'll pick you up at the airport when you get in."
Right.
So I get in, and Daryl's not at the airport to pick me up, but this couple is there, and they're looking at people and searching, and they come up to me and they have my business card in their hand,
Oh
and
my
they said,
goodness.
"Are you Anita?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, we're Daryl's friends. And we didn't want him to leave the party because he was having such a good time. And so we told him we'll come and get you."
Oh
So
my
they had my card, so I knew I was safe,
right.
that they really were
Right.
legit.
Right.
So the story gets weirder.
It
So,
gets weirder. Okay, before we go any, I just have to find out what you were wearing on that first day on the
oh,
plane. Do you remember?
yeah, I think I had this like it was like a shirt dress, but just straight, and the sack dresses were in style
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
only you tied a belt around them. It was like a buttoned up, but it was
Mhm.
bright colored stripes and some chunky sandals with high heels on them.
Got it. Okay.
And yeah, I remember that. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure that yeah. I don't know what I was wearing this night. I think I had a business suit. It was a
Yeah.
khaki full skirt, but with a jacket fitted. And
Mhm.
yeah, anyway.
Perfect.
So they pick me up. We go to
So,
the boathouse in Santa
so,
Monica on the pier
oh my goodness.
for this party.
Right.
And I walk in, and then I realize why Daryl didn't pick me up. Daryl is drunk. Daryl is blotto.
No.
Daryl doesn't even know who I am.
Oh
And
my,
I was like mortified,
oh,
just mortified. I
oh my
mean,
goodness.
I just didn't know what to do with myself, you know? It
Right.
was so awkward for me. And I mean, it was really bad. It was really so.
Had you
Um,
gotten any inclination from his friends who had picked you up
well, they
or
made
was
some
it?
comments about, well, he's had a little too much to drink and we didn't want him to drive. But I thought, oh, he's just partying. I didn't know
Yeah,
it was going to be
yeah.
this way.
Right, right.
And I thought, oh, I'm like beating myself up. This is what you get for going out with somebody you don't even know. This is why
Mhm.
you don't do this.
No
This is why you,
references, no.
yeah. I mean, he didn't have any references. You couldn't check him out. And then
No
this was long
internet.
before the internet.
Right.
So I remember
Wow.
leaving, and I called Lee, my partner, and I
Sure.
said, uh,
Your partner in business, right.
business. Yeah, I
Right.
said, "Would you pick me up? I'm on Santa Monica Pier." and you have to take me to my car or home or wherever I needed to go. I
Right,
can't remember. Yeah,
right,
to go home, to go.
right,
Yeah, because I had no car.
right.
And so she did. And the whole way I talked about what a fool I was and how stupid I was to go out with this person. And so that became kind of the metaphor that who is Daryl? Is he Thursday night or is he Friday night?
Oh my
Thursday
goodness.
night was this lovely, fabulous person who could drink socially, and we had a great evening, and I just enjoyed being with. And then Friday is this person that is like can't control his drinking, right?
Right. So did
So
you, I mean, did he know you left? Did he,
no,
no, there
he
was,
called me the next day to apologize, and I was not very warm.
I can
And I
imagine.
said, well, he said he was sorry. I said, yeah, but you don't even know what it was like because
Right,
you were out of it. Let me just tell you. And
right.
I just described to him in gory detail how uncomfortable it was for me.
Mhm.
And then we didn't, there was no communication for a few weeks. And then he called, and I had mellowed by then
Mhm,
about it. And so I agreed to see him. And
mhm.
he had moved from Santa Monica by then. I think he was living in the Inland Empire because he was going to do the land development there. So he came, and we started going out. And it was funny. Every time I would go out with him, I mean, before I would go, I'd think, why are you going to do this? And then I would go out with him, and then I remember why. I would always enjoy myself, and I would
Mhm.
always feel great, and then I would, the same thing. Each time it would be, why are you doing this? And then I would see him, and then it would be again, really.
Right.
So little by
So
little,
when
the
you
relationship.
question, let me just check in here. When you question, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
Why did that question come up? What was surfacing for you on the inside that was causing you to
Well,
doubt?
because I would be like a little apprehensive, like,
Mhm.
oh, I mean, I hated dating
Right. I get
always.
it.
It wasn't
Yeah.
fun. And,
Mhm.
and I think, well, why are you going out? Why are you doing it? Why do you, and then I would see there was enough good there, I guess, that I kept going back for more,
Right.
that
Right.
every time I would see him and we'd have an evening together, it would be lovely. I mean, it would
Mhm.
be fun, and we'd laugh a lot and talk, and, just,
And who doesn't love that, right?
and yeah.
Like, right.
And so it just, yeah. So then he moved here because I said I'm not going to be going back and forth to Fontana all the time. And
Right.
then he decided to change his career path anyway, and he sold the land, and he moved here to near me, and we went out for maybe another, gosh, I'd say another year, and
Yes.
then we finally decided to move in together.
Oh my goodness.
And
That's huge, Anita, for you. Huge.
huge,
I,
huge,
this is,
huge in my world of
yes.
living with somebody and not being married in my generation.
Right.
Um, the other hugeness was it was very hard for my mom to accept the fact that Daryl was handicapped,
Okay.
and that he walked on crutches. That was tough for her.
Right.
Um, it was,
How
yeah,
did you navigate that? I mean, did you have conversations with her? Did you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Can I be really honest?
Sure.
It was painful. Probably one of the most painful conversations we've ever had. I'm an only child. My I was the most important thing in my mom's life.
Of course.
To both of my parents, but especially her.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell them. They knew I was going out with somebody, but I didn't tell them anything else.
Right.
And my mom kept asking about him and asking about him. When are we going to meet him? And why don't we?
Mhm.
Finally, I knew it. I knew what it would be like, and it was awful. It was
Oh,
worse than I expected.
oh my
She
goodness.
just had a meltdown, and how could you do this? And why are you doing it to me? And why? What's everybody going to say? She lived her life by that.
Right.
What
Oh, I'm so sorry.
yeah,
No, that's
yeah.
heartbreaking, and
It was just painful. And
yeah.
at one point, my dad, well, they hadn't met him yet, but when they met, my dad immediately connected with Daryl.
Oh, that's
They just
great.
really connected right away.
Yeah,
But
that's
they hadn't met him yet. And my
so
mom,
you told your mother
I
then.
just told my dad was gone to his art class that night.
Okay.
And so,
And so it wasn't in front of him then. You told them ahead of time
oh
before
yeah, I
meeting
would
him.
never do that.
Yeah,
No, no,
yeah,
I would never surprise them that way. I mean,
yeah,
they would never have expected it, you know.
sure. Yeah.
And I'm glad. I would never want this to happen. I mean,
Right.
anyway, my mom said she was crying, and
Oh,
you know,
dear. Mm,
she said, uh, "Don't hate me, don't hate me." She said, "Put yourself in my spot. You
yeah.
know,
Mm,
what would you do if you were me?
right.
What would you think?" And I said, "Well, what I would think is number one, that I would be really proud I had raised a daughter who could look at somebody's inside and not their outside." I said, "And I'm
Beautiful.
not doing anything that you and dad didn't teach me to do in terms of being caring and loving." But I
Mhm.
said, the other thing is, I said, Daryl has a mother that loves him just like you love me.
Yeah,
And God forbid, what would you do if this happened to me and I was in an accident and I had to walk on crutches?
right.
Would you want no one to love me and reject me because of that?
Oh my
And I
goodness.
said, Mom, we all have crutches. Daryl's just show. My first husband could have walked out of GQ. He was stunningly handsome
Right.
and very broken inside.
Mm,
And I said, she knew that story. So
yeah.
I talked about those things, and I said, I don't know if um, Daryl's going to be in my life or not for the long
Mhm,
term. We're just going out at this point. But I
mhm.
said, I'm 30, 32, 33 then. I said, I've worked really hard to get to a place where finally, I like myself and I like my life.
Yeah.
And I said, whether Daryl's with me or not with me, nothing can take that away. Because she said, what's going to happen? And, it's going to be a burden to you. And it
Mhm.
was really painful because she said, well, you're lucky because I don't like myself and I don't like my life.
Oh my goodness.
So it was really a very painful, very honest conversation.
Right.
Very honest. But here's the good news,
Wow. Yeah.
because Daryl's the man he was. I mean, Daryl's
Yeah.
gone now. It'll be 5 years this summer.
Mm,
But
I'm sorry.
because he is the way he is, I told them I gave him the outline. I didn't give him the gory details, but I said, my mom doesn't, she's got a whole problem with your crutches, and she never, in her world and in her generation, handicapped people were locked in closets and they never came out. And I said, it's hard for her to accept. And so the first time they were going to meet was Christmas Eve at my house.
Yes.
I was so nervous. I had friends come to help buffer the evening. I was a wreck. A
I can
wreck.
imagine.
And
Oh my
Daryl's
God.
response was, well, I know. He said, what if I paint my crutches with invisible paint?
Oh.
He was so non-defensive. One of the things I loved about him best was
Yeah.
um, he was so comfortable with himself, no
Wow.
matter where or what or with who,
Mhm.
and comfortable with his disability that people didn't even notice. And one of my friends wanted to buy him a tennis racket for his birthday. And I said, Susan, he can't, he's on crutches. Oh yeah, I forgot. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
unimportant his handicap was to
Mhm.
people that knew him. But anyway, the good news and the nice ending to this story is he was the last person that could make my mom laugh.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he was so loving to her and kind.
Oh.
And he did so much. He fixed everything in her house. He repaired everything. He teased her. He just made her laugh all the time. And I think she
Oh.
grew to love him in as
Yeah.
much as she could. And I heard her, she could never say it to me, but I heard her talking about it to other people. And she would say, I know Anita's happy. I can see it on her. And I know she wasn't the first time. So she got it,
Yes. Yes.
but it was not easy.
Right. No, and such a good lesson for all of us. I mean, thank you for having the willingness to share that because you're not alone. I mean, there are other
Yeah.
people that
Well, it was really
have,
tough. And I have
yeah,
to say, honestly, I knew how hard the conversation would be. And I always, as most children do, want their parents' approval.
of course.
And I was scared to tell them,
I
scared to
can
tell her especially.
imagine.
And then I started not liking myself because I felt like a coward. And I
Oh,
knew why I wasn't telling him. And I
yeah.
thought, you have to do this. It's going to be
Mhm.
painful and uncomfortable, but you can't shy away from this. And
Oh,
you have to do it sooner or later. So just guts up and do it.
Mm-hmm.
but it was tough.
I can only, yeah, just getting those words out of your mouth must have just been so hard, when that time came,
Yeah.
when those moments are happening, and to have the courage and the stamina, the resilience basically to be able to do that.
Well, but I think when we face those kinds of things, all of us, we know inside it
Hmm.
can be the limit that ruins the rest of my life, or
Hmm.
I can push through it, and it's painful and tough, but it's nothing was worse than feeling like a coward and hating myself for not
Right.
telling them.
Right, because you love this man. I mean, you
Yeah, by then
absolutely
I
love
did.
him. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you were,
yeah,
and so to not tell them was to disown yourself and the love that you were feeling for
exactly.
him and that sort of thing. And it's so, I just have to connect for us, your willingness to get on that plane,
Hmm.
the day after that crash, your willingness to engage a total stranger when you had never done that before,
Hmm.
and your willingness to take this step now,
Yeah,
as far as being the courage
yeah.
to just go beyond what any, all the boundaries that we put around ourselves to make
Oh
ourselves
yeah,
safe, right?
and to
Uh,
protect ourselves. Sure,
yeah,
sure.
but you keep
Yeah.
blowing through those. So I can
Well,
only
and
imagine what
let me just tell you, it wasn't smooth sailing.
I can imagine
I
not.
mean, after this, I
Right.
mean, Daryl and I got married. I mean, it was hard
Oh,
for my mom because we lived together for a while and she didn't want anybody to know and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, we got married and
and did they come to the wedding? Did your
oh,
folks come?
absolutely.
Oh, good,
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah,
And
they
his,
were, she didn't, she never did anything like cut me off or resisted or any of that. But I knew how she felt. I knew that she wasn't happy. Her idea is that I should marry some doctor with $1 million
right,
that looked
right, right,
perfect, you
right,
know.
right, right. Doesn't
So,
matter how they treated you, right?
yeah.
But and then with you and Daryl, things just, in spite of this, situation happening with your mom,
Mhm.
and the two of you were still able to keep sailing through that, because that could have
We
been another place
Yeah.
where it could have
Well, I
stopped,
think that's
right?
that's thanks to him and
Right.
his total non-defensiveness and
Mm-hmm.
his self-acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
He never felt like he had to prove himself to anyone, and
Isn't that
he wasn't
wonderful?
raised with what's everybody going to think like I was.
Mhm.
But that was so we got married, and the again, like I'm telling you, it wasn't smooth sailing because that dilemma of Thursday night, Friday night was still there.
Okay. Now,
And
were you
so what
surprised? Let me just back up just a little bit. Were you surprised that you actually married him? I mean, was that a surprise to you, or
no,
did you feel that coming?
no,
Okay. So
no, I
you,
felt, I mean, I don't even remember him asking me to marry him. I mean, I remember him telling me he loved me, and I said, I don't pressure me. I'm not ready to say that yet. But then
yeah.
I did. And
Hmm.
I don't even remember, we just kind of assumed we were going to get married. I don't even remember that he asked, proposed, or any of that. And
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
one for all that. I want an engagement ring. I don't like all that crap. So
Right.
I didn't care about that. But
Well, it's
we
great.
decided to get married. We did the courthouse thing, his parents, my parents, and then we had a little reception the next day with, I don't know, maybe 80 or
Sometimes.
so people.
Yeah.
But so that was great. But the drinking part from
Okay.
the
Yeah.
Thursday night, Friday night dilemma was there.
Right.
Sometimes Daryl was Friday night and sometimes he was Thursday night. And once we started living together and we got married, I saw it more and more, and the drinking got worse and worse and worse.
Wow.
And I was, I tried everything that anybody does that lives with an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I hid the stuff. I threw it away. I yelled, I screamed, I cried. I did everything. None of that ever works.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was
Did you have a sense of what was driving that?
driving him to
The
drink.
drinking? Uh-huh. Hmm.
Alcoholism.
Okay.
I don't think people. I mean, everybody's got problems, and
Right.
alcoholism is an answer, is a disease, is a drug for to solve your problem. So somebody does it by eating, somebody does it by taking drugs, somebody does it by,
Right.
doing something else. His he was an alcoholic, so
Hmm.
that's why he drank. And um, I finally I saw it and I realized it. And I was teaching one day, teaching a stress management seminar to some teachers, and one of the women in the group had mentioned that she was a recovering alcoholic, and I remembered that. It clicked for me. And a few weeks later, I happened to be back again, serendipity. I happened to be back at that same school, and I was there early, and I went into the cafeteria to get some coffee before the session, and
Sure.
who walks in but that same woman. And
Interesting.
so I said, you know, she remembered me, and we talked a bit, and I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, she's no. And I said, you mentioned in the session you're a recovering alcoholic. And I said, I have a question for you. I said, what do you do if you love someone that's an alcoholic? And she said, go to Al-Anon.
Mm.
And she said, I'm not surprised. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I don't know, something about the way you talked and the things that you said, how you taught made
Yeah,
me have a feeling that this was an issue in your life. So I don't
really.
know how she saw it or what happened, but that
Yeah,
was her comment to me. So I started going.
wow,
And of course, I went, as
that's
most people
powerful.
do,
Mm-hmm.
to punish Daryl and to
Mm-hmm.
fix him. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, I wanted to feel guilty that I had to go to these dumb meetings because of him. And number two, because I thought I could learn how to make him stop.
Right,
And
right.
for anybody that knows about 12-step programs, Al-Anon isn't about the alcoholic, it's about the person that loves the alcohol. It's about you. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to understand you have to look at yourself. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
self-development process of, you have the same 12 steps they do, but instead of saying I'm powerless over alcohol, you're powerless over the alcoholic. But it helped me. I went for a good 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was, really gave me strength and understanding, and helped me work deal with myself and my own feelings and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it got me to a point where I was able to confront him,
Mm-hmm.
to do an intervention.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and while I'm saying this, Daryl wasn't only an alcoholic. I mean, he wasn't
Wow.
always drinking. So there was always the Thursday night times when he was terrific. He was
Exactly.
the Daryl that made me laugh, and that was such a good problem solver, and so
Right.
funny and fun, and able to do everything and to fix everything, and to,
Right.
he had the most therapeutic personality, and people were drawn to him and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But and people didn't know much about the alcoholism because they didn't see it. I did, and I lived
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Right.
And this was another one of those where you have to face yourself.
Right. Yeah.
I knew I wasn't confronting him because, I mean, I knew that I I said I was afraid. I was afraid that it would be the end of the relationship.
Sure.
But then I
Yeah.
said, there's one relationship that never ends, and that's the one you have with yourself.
Right.
And whatever happens in your life, this is the face that you see in the mirror every morning. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got to be okay with you. And I got to the place where I knew I couldn't live with it anymore. And
Right.
so I confronted him, and he was upset and angry. And I knew he would react that way, as most
Right.
alcoholics do.
Right. Right.
And he said, his counselor and he had a counselor for, like an AA, not an AA, but a substance abuse counselor.
Oh, he already had one.
Well,
So
he
that,
had to, because he has so many DUIs. He was
oh,
mandated to go.
got it. No, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
he
at
didn't
least
do
there
it
was,
by voluntarily.
right.
But I went to the guy and I said, I don't know what to do, but I'm done.
Yeah.
And he said, well, you can do an intervention. And I said, well, I said, I don't know. And when, and I was kind of hemming and hawing it. He was brilliant,
Mhm.
because he said to me, oh, you haven't had enough yet.
Ah.
When he said that, I go, oh yeah, come tomorrow at noon. And so we did the intervention, and Daryl was upset and angry. And
And by an intervention, just for those of us that don't
we
know, what does that?
confronted him about it and said, you have a disease
Mhm.
called alcoholism, and it's not going to get fixed unless you get help. And you need to get help, and you need to go into a treatment program.
And so
And
you and the
if you
counselor were
don't
there.
go into the treatment program, our
Mhm.
relationship is over, because I can't live with this
Got
anymore.
it.
So
So you
either
had the
you
you
go
had the you had the
work on it.
counselor there.
The
Mhm.
counselor was there. It was just me and him and Daryl. Either
Mhm.
you go do that, or we're done.
Mhm.
And it was just, scary. But Gerald, he said, I got to think about it. So he went away for 3 days.
Mhm.
And because of Al-Anon, I was very peaceful. I
Mhm.
wasn't scared anymore. The
Mhm.
scary part was the confrontation and doing it.
Sure.
The
Right.
result, I just felt like it was going to work out how it should.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I couldn't go on the way it was.
Right.
And so I was pretty calm.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to Al-Anon and the help and the understanding and the training that you get that helps you work on yourself enough to help yourself.
Right.
And I came home from work on that third day, and there was on every door jamb in the house were shirts hanging. And I said, well, what's going on? And he said, well, if I'm going to go in the hospital, I have to have some clean clothes. So he did it.
He did
He
it.
went into it, and it was a miracle. But I think he knew too that he was killing himself. He
Right.
really, and that this was his really last chance if he wanted to have a life worth
Right.
living.
Right.
So it's rare that somebody goes to the program the first time, a treatment program, and it sticks. But he
Mm-hmm.
stopped drinking. He became very, he involved in his own AA program and worked the steps and
Mm-hmm.
helped other people. And the first, like everything in life, things work out the way they should, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And the first week he was there, I had to leave and be gone all week for work.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my gosh, I should be there to go to the spouse meetings and the family meeting sessions and all that. And I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to, and then I thought, no, you know what? This is his boat and he's got to row it. It's probably better that you're not there. He
Mm-hmm.
needs to do this alone. And then of course, when I came home, I went to the meetings and did all that,
Sure.
the support groups and stuff. And then when he came home, again, it was a week that I was going to be gone. And I said to
Interesting.
myself, oh my gosh, his first week home, how's he going to manage? And then I said again, you know what? This is divine intervention.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to figure that out. And he's going to figure it out a whole lot better if you're not around.
Mm-hmm.
And he managed. He said when he went home from the airport leaving me, he said he got so scared, he just started to shake. And he thought, I don't, this is exactly when in the past, my pattern was when Anita was gone, I'd really just drink the whole week.
Right. Right.
But he said he had enough sense to go to the hospital, and there was always somebody there to talk to. And the
Good.
minute when he got there, one of the guy met him, and he goes, God, Daryl, I'm so glad you're here. This is just family came in. I'm going to talk to the alcoholic. Would you talk to the family and help them? And it helped him get out of
Yes.
himself. The best way to help yourself always is to help others.
Right.
And he managed through the week, and he worked a
Oh,
great program. He made wonderful friends that are still friends today.
wow.
He helped a ton of people,
That.
and it gave him um, the rest of his life. He wouldn't have had any more. He wouldn't have lived much longer. He was
Mm-hmm.
having a lot of physical problems
Mm-hmm.
from it. So, it was a miracle for both of us. And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so the rest of the time was after that, it was smooth sailing, with the exception of his health problems. He had lymphoma once, and then finally lung cancer at the end. But he always said, "I'm so lucky." They told me I wouldn't live past my 30s because of the accident and the
Mm.
paralysis, and he said I beat him by 40 years, and these have been the best years of my life. And
Oh,
how can you ever complain
right.
when you live with somebody who has so many limits and who doesn't let them stop him? He never, ever complained. He
Wow.
always said, look how lucky I am. He said when
Beautiful.
he was in rehab,
Mm-hmm.
um, physical rehab after his accident, they kept him for a year then. And he said the first few, I guess, weeks, he felt sorry for himself because they didn't think he would walk at all. They thought
Wow.
he'd be in a wheelchair. But he
Yeah.
said it was the era of thalidomide babies, when babies were born with no limbs because
Right.
their mothers had taken that
Right.
drug.
Right. Yeah.
And he said, I went down to the pediatric floor. And
Oh,
he said, when I saw those kids, he said, I knew, he said, those kids didn't even have a chance to live without it. There had so many limits. And he said,
mm,
I kicked myself in the butt and decided you can't feel sorry for yourself.
right.
You know?
Get out there and do it.
So he
Yeah.
was
And
just amazing, just
he,
kind, helpful. therapeutic. Everybody that was around him would always feel better after being around him.
Isn't that
Funny,
beautiful?
we
Yeah.
laughed. I rarely went to bed that I didn't laugh myself to sleep.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah, and to make your mother laugh too, right?
She would laugh. I remember one
And
day he went over and she would answer the door with her nightgown and then a robe shorter than her nightgown and a sweater on top of that and all these. And he said, "Oh," he used to tease her, call her Patty Girl. He said, "Patty Girl, you got the layered look on today."
how sweet. That's just so precious. And it sounds like your dad connected with him
My
too.
dad
So
and he connected a lot,
yeah.
very, very easily. But my dad got sick early and gosh, yeah, early in the time that we
Yeah.
knew each other, Daryl and I knew each other. My dad died.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Uh,
Was
gosh,
he able to
Daryl and I
go
had
to
only been together 3 years, but they connected very much on a heart connection and understood each other. And Daryl used to, my dad used to always call him Champ.
Oh, how
Yeah, that was
sweet.
sweet.
What a great nickname, Champ.
Mm,
Champ. Wow, Anita, that's just what a profound story, and a profound love that the two of you have for each other.
yeah,
And of course that you
I was
have for
blessed,
him.
really blessed. And
Right.
of all the things that I loved about him, maybe the one I loved the best was that he never tried to change me.
Mm.
He he was the most accepting person of everyone, but he accepted me fully, who I was, and he never tried to change me. I mean, I laugh. I used to say I tried to change him mightily, and I failed at every turn. But he was so he loved me exactly the way I was, and people would say, what does Daryl think about you traveling? What does Daryl think about you working so much? What is there? He would say, this is the Anita I married. This is
He
what I
really
expected.
got you. Yeah, he
He
saw
got
you.
me. He
Yeah, he
really
got you.
got me.
Yeah, he
And he
did.
never made me, I mean, because Lee and I, my business partner, and we got married, basically started our business the same year that Daryl and I got married.
Oh,
I
wow.
think for many spouses, that would be a source of conflict, or that I would feel stuck in the middle, that
Hmm.
they were
Hmm.
pulling me both.
Right. They
He
both want all
never,
of you.
yeah, he never said,
Mhm.
"Why you spend so much time with Lee?" or "Why do you have to work so much?" or "Why can't he?" Never.
Right.
No.
What a generous
He
soul.
was
Yeah.
very, very, very
Just,
generous.
oh, so
Very.
wonderful.
One of our friends, one of the men that worked for us, Ernesto, who's became a dear friend, he looked at Daryl like a father. And
Yeah.
he told me when Daryl died how much he learned from Daryl about construction and all of that. But he said, what I learned was more important was how to be a person. He said he
Mm.
taught me about how to give to other people. And he gave me so many examples of Daryl telling him, like, to go fix something for a neighbor and don't charge her, I'll pay. Don't,
Oh,
and things like that,
yeah.
that was who he was.
Real great. Yeah. Just what a wonderful human being. Yeah.
Mm,
Just
he
and
was.
and that and
And
that
he didn't think he would. I mean, there was nothing sanctimonious or I mean, he was so humble and so real. I mean,
he sounds like
he
it.
didn't
Totally
he
real. Yeah.
never preached to anybody. He
Right.
never told anybody what to do. He
Right.
only lived his life, and that's how they learned from him.
Right. Isn't that the best?
Oh,
To,
totally,
to
totally.
teach through your example
Yeah.
and how you really live your life
Oh,
just
yeah.
like he did. And it sounds like, I mean, I certainly can't presuppose, but it sounds like he saw you. And I mean, it was like every day after that, he wanted to be with you. So he saw your light, he
Well, he
saw
made
whatever
me
it
feel
was.
like the most important person in the world. But, he would tell anybody that he thought I was the most smartest woman in the world. But
Well,
to
aren't you?
him, I
I
was.
thought
You
you
know what I
are.
mean? But he made me feel, I mean, it's pretty
Oh,
seductive when somebody looks at you that way.
isn't that wonderful? What a gem.
I was lucky,
No,
very
I
lucky.
know. It's so touching to hear the whole story and to hear the whole story, if you know what I'm saying. Just to know that,
Yeah, it wasn't
well,
easy, and
right,
nothing's perfect, and for
never.
sure I'm not, neither is he. But how much I learned from him, and
Right.
how much he knew about human behavior, even though I have a degree in it. This man taught me so much. I mean, for
Really.
example, Lee and I call it the banana rule.
Yeah.
I would ask him about a friend that he might have that I didn't care about. Why do you hang out with so and so? He's such a jerk. And he said, well, I take what I like and I leave the rest. He said, you don't eat the whole banana, you know? And we call it the banana rule. And it helped me to find the good in people and not only focus on the parts that I don't like, you know?
Right, right.
And
That
there's just so many, like, if we disagreed, he'd go, well, that's why there's chocolate and vanilla.
is
And I mean, it helps you
it
to have that kind of a
does.
response, you know?
It does. And to know that all opinions matter and that, right, and that you can be together. And it sounds like what, as there are challenges in every relationship, working relation, personal relationship, everything, but then navigating that together in a way brings you closer together, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And I
don't
mean, we
know.
were really pretty honest in terms of,
Yeah,
when he found out about the cancer and when
yeah,
he decided to quit chemo after a couple of years and
yeah.
finding out how much time he had left. And, we would talk about how to deal with it and what we're going to do. And, yeah, we didn't have to tiptoe around each other.
Right, that you were real. You were real with each other,
Yeah.
down to earth, real. And that's what I'm hearing as the big life lesson here. And that's what I'd love you to talk a little bit about. Just, and you've said it through everything you've shared, but it's like really, what are the words of wisdom that you would share with our audience of being real, for example, in such a hard place as that, when you're not going to continue with the cancer treatments and the choices that
Yeah.
each person makes and how to navigate that. And so, and your resilience all the way through, is just so heartfelt, and also so much to learn from. And to his point that you are the smartest person in the world, and that what words of wisdom can you share
He needed to
about
get out more.
being in relationship? No, it's just about sustaining a
Well,
relationship.
I think it make what to look for and what, when I used to think, God, this is, dear, we laughed because we said, no, if anybody put us together on a blind date, we would have said, are you kidding?
Seriously?
Because
Oh
we
my God.
would have never, I don't think we would have ever
Really?
chosen each other. I mean, we wouldn't have ever thought that this was the right person for me.
Right.
Like it would have, yeah, we both were shocked that we ended up with each other.
That's amazing.
And he said, if you would have known me when I was younger, I said the same. I would have
Mhm.
been a goody two shoes. You wouldn't have even looked at me. And I said, you would have been the bad kid because he was always getting in trouble and having fights. And, he'd always have bar fights because he'd stick up for the underdog. And, he was wild and crazy. And I was not.
Right.
And
Yeah,
yeah.
they would have never let you go out with him, in other words.
Oh, no, I
Right.
wouldn't have let myself go out with him.
Right.
And I would probably thought I needed some intellectual. And I don't know what I thought. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think number one, I think is so important is sense of humor. But
Hmm.
also, and I mean, you can't have a really good sense of humor unless you're number one, smart, and number two, honest.
Hmm.
Because without those two things, there is no humor to me.
Right.
But yeah, I guess that, and he used to say, no, everybody thinks how weird it is that we're together because we don't have any interest in common. I mean, we rarely could find a movie we liked both.
Okay.
I mean, we even would go to the kind, where they had more theaters in one place, and we'd go together and then each go to a different
Well,
movie.
that's funny.
But
Yeah.
but our interest, I didn't want to fish and camp, and he wasn't
Right.
interested in going to plays and my Serbian cultural things, and so we
Right.
had different interests. But what was the same were our values,
Right.
the values and the commitment to one another, and the deepest part of our values was we're
Mhm.
always connected. About,
Mhm.
he never asked me how much I paid for anything.
Right. Oh.
I never objected when he wanted to give somebody money to help them.
Mhm.
uh we this is a Daryl thing.
Yeah.
He found a fixer upper, and he
Mhm.
said, oh, let's buy it and fix it up. And I said, I know why you want to do it. And he said, why? Because one of his friends in AA was a single mom then she was living in an apartment. And I said, you want to fix it up for Stephanie so she and Angela can live there? And he goes, yeah. And I said, okay. So we fixed it up and we told her that as soon as she could qualify for a loan,
Right.
we would sell it to her at our cost. And we did.
That's
And
amazing.
the fact that, I mean,
Oh my
the
goodness.
fact that we both were okay about those kinds of decisions,
Right.
you know, or one time my cousin gave, it was at a family get together and I saw him hand Daryl a piece of paper. And I said, when they left, I said, what did he give you? What was that paper? He goes,
Mhm.
oh, he said, I heard him talking a few times ago when we were together. He was having some problems. So he said, I gave him a check. And he said, he just gave me the money back. Daryl never asked me. He never told me. He didn't say, oh, I'm going to do this for your cousin. Aren't I great? He just,
Right.
that's how he did things. No, he,
Wow.
no fanfare, no talking about it, just kindness. And
Just did
when
it.
you see those kind of values, you know, it just touches you.
Right. Oh, that's priceless. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, and yeah, that's such a beautiful lesson. I mean, really, to look so far beyond all the usual things. It's like going down to the core.
Well, he always used to tell me, because I had a friend who was from Montenegro, from where my family's from, a young woman staying with me during the summer for an internship a few years ago after Daryl died. And
Mm.
through a series of crazy things happening, but she crashed both of my cars, and
Oh,
both of them were totaled.
oh my
And
goodness.
you know, obviously I
Sorry.
had insurance,
I'm glad
and
she was
so
she was okay. That's
she
the
was okay. Yeah, she was okay, and the other person was okay. It was no fatality or God forbid
mm,
injury, but you know, they totaled cars now with three dents and it's totaled. But
sure.
anyway, you know, she was, you know, upset. I said, look, Daryl would say, she knew Daryl before because she had been here before when he was still alive. I said, Daryl would say, if money can fix it, it's not a problem.
Wow.
And so he taught me stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
He, yeah, he was just
That's sweet learning.
one in a million, one in a million.
1 in a million.
And
Wow.
how lucky I was that I was just on that plane. How lucky he was, he would say
Oh,
too.
totally. Both of you were
Yeah,
very fortunate. It was like a setup by someone else. It
yeah.
was a
It's so
setup
funny because
by the universe.
at his funeral, I had four people speak that
Mhm.
knew him from different pieces of his life. Lee, my partner, was one, and then I had three other people.
Yeah.
And one of our friends, a dear friend who died a couple of years later, when he was
Oh,
leaving, he's just shaking his head, and I go, "What's wrong? What are you doing? Why are you doing that?" He goes, "God, after listening to all that, I got a lot of work to do before I die. So people talk to me, talk about me like they talk about Daryl." But I
no
mean, it
kidding.
was, you know, people who didn't know him would hear these stories.
Right. And he didn't make a big deal about the things he did. So
No,
of course no one would know
no,
until later.
no, and he didn't care if anyone knew. I mean,
Right.
he didn't.
He did it
He,
for the heart. Yeah,
he
for
did it
the
because he felt like it was the right thing to do, and he
mhm.
always had a heart for people in need and for underdogs. And
Mm. Anita, I just can't thank you enough. I want to just keep
welcome.
pulling more and more stories out of
Well, I love it. I
because
love
it
it
sounds
because people in my sessions used to always say at the end of the session, they go, and thank Daryl too, because we learned as much from him as we did. Because I always tell Daryl stories. And I was so worried after he died. I thought, I don't know if I can tell those stories, and how will it feel, and will it be awful? But
oh,
it's not. I still tell Daryl stories, and
that's wonderful.
I still share his lessons. And you know, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like he lives on in my mind, in my memory, and in my heart, obviously, but
Right.
in teachings that other people can learn from.
Right. Oh, those lessons never die,
Yeah.
right? No, and he feels so vibrant and alive right now as we
Yes.
talk about him. It's
Yeah.
just,
Lee calls me all the time and we talk about it. And, you know, him and I
oh,
miss Daryl so much. And me too.
oh,
And we laugh about stories. And yeah.
tell stories about him. What a gem. What a
Yeah.
gem. You were both so lucky, and you are such a gem. Is so just, I mean, the ultimate setup, if you will, on that plane, on that very
Yeah.
plane. So
So,
that's,
you know what? I always say there's a big P plan, and, you know, and when my little P plan doesn't work out, I always have to remember that there's another plan bigger than mine. And there
Yeah,
sure was that day.
there sure was. And boy, here you are to tell the story. So,
I
so
don't know. There's going to be people that will hear this. They'll be maybe surprised because I don't, tell everybody all of this. But it's the truth, and there's nothing there that I'm ashamed of, or that Daryl wouldn't want people to know.
no, and
He would be
it's such
glad
a,
that people know this. He would not be, there's nothing about it his life that he would not share.
we're honoring him and you together, and we're honoring how you met, the adventure you've been on, the challenges that you both faced. And he faced his, you faced yours,
Yeah,
and the willingness to come together and face them together.
yeah.
And that's the lesson that I'm learning, to be open to the synchronicities, like at the beginning end, at the beginning of your interview where you were
Right.
sharing, you were doing everything that you were always
That was
determined
taught
never to
not to
do.
do.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like nobody in their
exactly.
right mind goes out with a total stranger,
No.
and so, and kind of turning 180s on that,
Mhm.
and then continuing on the path, and both of you getting married to each other, thinking, my goodness, here we are. And then, you know, meeting the challenges along the way that everybody has, but meeting them in a courageous,
Everybody has them. They're just different kind.
they're all
But
different.
the
Yeah.
issues always boil down to having to make decisions,
Yeah.
and face face tough things,
Yeah.
in a straight on, honest way,
Yeah.
and in a loving way. I remember
Right.
somebody telling me that somebody that they heard said, "What would love do?" Whenever they have a question about how to respond, the answer is, "What would love do?" So when I'd be stuck, okay, what's the loving response here? What's the most
Right.
loving? And even though I mean, I don't know that Daryl felt like it was loving when we confronted him. It was out of love,
It was.
and
Oh,
it ended up saving his life.
absolutely. No question. And you don't know who else's life you saved. We just don't know those
Yeah.
things. And so, and really, there was that one turning point. The one comment that you made that really got my attention was the counselor when he
Mhm.
said, "Oh, you haven't had
Oh,
enough
goodness.
yet."
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's
Well, in,
like,
in AA, they say, every alcoholic hits their bottom.
okay,
And when they hit their bottom, that's the time when they realize they have to, they go to AA, or for some, the bottom is when they die because they never go to AA. They never get sober. They never, you know, start helping themselves. But it's the same for Al Anon. We have a bottom too. So
right,
you reach a point where you make the choice that you aren't going to live with this way anymore.
right,
And what he was making me face was, I guess you didn't hit your bottom yet. And when he said that in such a tough way to me, it made me just snap to, because I knew I was not going to live with this anymore.
right. It became crystal clear, is what it sounded
Exactly,
like
just
to
like
me. It's like,
exactly in a minute.
boom, just like that. And that's, I think, a real important lesson here that applies across our lives.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about alcoholism, it's about
No.
this or about that. And then how can you recognize when you're at that point? And to hear that voice that says, "Oh, I guess you haven't had enough of this then,"
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And to be, I mean, that to me is a huge wake up and a
Yeah.
learning from your
Well, and
story.
he, the other thing he offered me too was an option that I hadn't considered, because my only answer was, I'm ending it. I'm leaving.
Hmm.
And I hadn't thought about, because I gave up on him getting sober.
Right.
I didn't think, because he had gone to AA and signed it because he had to from the court, and he'd signed the cards, or he wouldn't go and he'd sign the cards himself and I'll
Mm.
do all that,
Oh my goodness. Right.
And
No.
I just gave
Right.
up because the only thing I had known was to keep nagging, and that didn't work. But
Right.
when he offered the option of an intervention, that was something I really hadn't thought about, you know.
Yeah.
And I
And
guess
that
it took
takes
that to get his attention, for Daryl
and
to
that takes
understand how
courage to
serious I
take.
was.
Yeah, that's courage again, stepping
Mhm.
in and
Yeah,
taking a stance,
yeah,
taking a stance and being
yeah.
willing to do it for love. I mean,
Mhm.
truth be told, for
Yeah,
love for both of you. So, just these, just be the salient points along the way are just such great learnings for all of us, and to be able to know those places and to think of the options, that it doesn't have to be this way. It can be
It's not just, either leave or stay and be
right.
miserable. There's a
Mhm.
third option. There is
Yeah.
hope. There is another way.
Oh, there's hope and there's
Yeah,
another
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. Well, thank
Anita,
you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this.
oh
Obviously, I
my,
love talking about it because it makes him be with me here when I'm
he's
talking.
with both of us right now, and he'll
Yeah.
be with our audience soon too, which will be very exciting. And I just adore him, and I don't even know, I mean, I know him through you. So I think it's just an incredible time that the two of you had together.
Mhm,
And now that you are carrying, his memory with you,
mhm.
and his wonderful beingness in this
Yeah.
world. So
Well,
yeah,
he definitely changed me.
wow.
He definitely improved me. Made me a better version of myself, let me
That's
say.
so sweet. Yeah. How
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
That's just so sweet. Yeah. And I'm sure he would say that and more about you. We'll give him his voice, in the other world.
Yeah.
So yeah, so no, I'm just super, super grateful. You're so sweet with all of your travels and teaching and everything you're doing right now to give us this time,
Oh, well, thank you for
to,
asking me. I mean, I hope somebody finds this story interesting and
oh my goodness.
maybe instructive in
It's
terms of
called
helpful in their
riveting.
lives.
It's riveting.
Yeah,
No, it's just full of so many great lessons in it. So thank you so much, Anita.
you're
And
welcome.
is there any final story you want to tell, or is that have we reached our any final dip? Maybe a fun Daryl story that you want to share that would.
Well, I used to, and I always say, in the end, he was always right. No
Okay,
matter how much I would argue with him about something, he was right. So we were at Yosemite one summer for vacation, and it was our anniversary, and I wanted to go to the Awani for dinner.
sure.
And I said, "Can we go to the Awani for?" He said, "Sure." So I said, "Okay, I'll make reservations." So we weren't staying in the park, but we are staying, outside. So when I came back, I said, "Yeah, I got us reservations." I said, "But you got to wear a jacket, in there." And I said, um, "And they have sport coats that you can borrow." He goes, "I have a jacket." I said, "Honey, that's not a jacket. That's a windbreaker.
Great.
It's a jacket." So I thought, don't argue with him. Let the maitre d' tell him. I'm not going to be the bad person here. So I didn't say anymore. And because they have like a closet of jackets in different sizes,
Right,
because
right.
it's a requirement that the men have to wear sport coat.
Yeah.
So we get there the night of the dinner and for our anniversary, and we come up to the counter. "Oh, Mr. Rowe, yes." And Daryl's got his blue windbreaker on, and he's walking like he has a tuxedo on. I
Of
mean, like
course.
he's like styling. He thinks he's looking really cool. And I'm just thinking, oh, shit, what's going to happen? The manager he said, "Oh, Mr. Rowe, yes, come right this way." Doesn't say a word. So we sit down, and he goes, "See?" And I go, "Yeah, he's going to have a fight with a guy on crutches and look like a jerk." Of course, he didn't say anything to. So we're laughing. So Daryl goes, "Look around. Every single place where one of the guys had to wear one of those jackets, they were all blue, kind of a royal blue
Yeah.
sport coats. Every single royal blue coat was on the back of their chair. They wore it when they walked in, they took it off and put it on the back of their chair." He goes, "Look, all those guys took theirs off too." So we just laughed. I go, "You're right, you're right, you're always right." And he was. The truth is, he was right.
Right. Isn't that's a great story. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Well,
yeah,
Daryl being right,
yeah.
continuing to be right.
Well, he was right
Absolutely.
about one thing. He picked me, and that helped me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And the two of you are a force
yeah,
that continues to this day with the work that you're doing in the world,
yeah.
Anita. So
Thank you.
I just love everything you're doing. I'm so grateful to have met you and to have met Daryl through you.
Yeah,
And so just I'm excited to get your story into the world so that people can know, some good lessons on how to, navigate a relationship. Now, a special relationship, and the things that
well,
come
for
up.
the
So,
relationship to special, that person has to be special.
yeah,
I mean, I was just so lucky. So
yeah.
it's
And you didn't
it is.
settle for less, right? You didn't settle for anyone else. Nope.
I can't live a lie.
Hmm.
If it doesn't work for me, I can't be pretending. I tried that once. Didn't work.
It doesn't last.
No. Uh-uh.
Right. No,
Yeah.
you're real. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Heidi. It was great talking to you.
Great
And
talking to you
yeah,
too.
this was
And we'll
fun.
just, to be continued,
Sure.
as far as there will be another topic in the future and I'll reach out and we'll do, share more going forward. And in the meantime, let me tell our viewers that you can find out more information about Anita and the wonderful work she's doing in the world. I'll add that into our posting so you can click on that and see where she is and what she's doing.
Super.
Anita, thank you.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right.